So we have done our cell counts and we've confirmed that we have 1 to 5 million cells per milliliter. And now that we have that number, we're going to go back to our cells that we want to freeze down, and we're going to make sure that we have 10 mils right here. So we have our 10 mils of cells, and we're just going to take those cells and we're going to go over to the centrifuge here. You're just going to open the door by hitting the door button. All right. So in here, you need to make sure that if you're going to use 10 mils of your solution, that you balance it out with 10 mils. So there's a whole rack of different weights right here. So we have 10 mils, and that's what we're going to use. So we're going to throw 10 mils of just the random, I think that's Nano Pure water, and then we're going to take our 10 mil and put it exactly opposite of that. Okay, and when you close the door, make sure you do it on the left side here. Just close the door. All right, so we have our cells inside, and now we're gonna check our RPMs. So the first thing we're gonna check is RPM. So I hit RPM button. We're gonna set our RPM to 1500. So it's at 1500, and then hit enter. And the next part we're gonna check is our time, and we're gonna do 5 minutes. And right now it's set to 5 minutes, so that's perfect. We're also gonna hit enter after that. And now we can just hit the start button. Alright, so while our cells are spinning in the centrifuge, we're going to prepare our freezing media. So for that, we need this, the FBS that we use for our regular cells, and we can find that in the freezer just above the fridge over there. And then we're also going to need some DMSO, and that is found here in this microscope supplies drawer. There's just a little container of DMSO, and the only other thing you'll need is you're going to need an empty vial like this. So, alright, so we're ready to begin. Our FBS, as you can see, has been thawed out from the freezer. So we took it from the freezer and also put it in the hot water bath to thaw it out. And what we're going to try to get is we're trying to get 3 milliliters of total volume. So what we're going to take is 90% FBS and 10% DMSO. So we're actually going to use 2.7 milliliters of FBS and 300 microliters of DMSO. And you can measure the 2.7 milliliters out with this blue pipette, and it's an estimate. It doesn't have to be extremely precise, but do as good as you can. And then you can use the micropipette for the 300 milliliters of this. Okay, so we're actually gonna get ready here and do this, prepare this media. So we have our pipette. We're gonna take 2.7 mils of that and put it in the empty vial. So, 7. And then we're going to take 300 milliliters. So I have the blue topped one, the 1000 microliter micropipette, and we're going to set that to 30. And we're going to take out the amount of DMSO we need. All right. And then you can use the pipette to mix it up a bit. Alright, so we've waited the 5 minutes for our cells to finish, and now the door light is lit, so that knows you know you can press the door button, pop it out, and we have our cells right here, and there will be a little pellet at the bottom, and that's what we're going to concentrate on next. Alright, so we have our cells back from the centrifuge, and we have our freezing media. And the first thing we're going to do is we're gonna suck off the excess fluid out of this cell. So we'll just grab the vacuum and do that real quick. Alright. So what you're going to do is you're just going to suck off all that extra media. And when you're done, there'll be a little pellet at the bottom. So just be very careful about not sucking that pellet up. And get as much of that media as you can without sucking the pellet. Okay. Perfect. And then all you're going to do is you're going to add the freezing media to your cells. So you can use the pipette for that. Alright, perfect. Alright, so we've put our freezing media in, and now all we're going to do is we're just going to stir up the cells and make sure they're evenly distributed in that fluid. Just kind of give them a little stir to make sure everything's mixed well. And then your next step is just going to be to cap. We're going to cap that, and we're going to get our freezing vials actually ready. So the vials we're going to store our cells in. And these cells just look like this, and you can find them up on the shelf behind the hood here. And you're going to make sure you label them. You're going to write your initials, the date, and the type of cells that are in the vial or that you're working with. Alright, so we have our cells all made up and ready to go, and we'll pretend that we've labeled our vials here. And what we're going to do is you're going to suck up all the cells out of this media. And you're going to squirt about 1 ml per vial, 1 to 1.25. Don't exceed 1.25 because you need to leave room for the cells to expand. And there's a little marker on there if you want. So just somewhere between those two lines is how much liquid you're going to want in there. Perfect. And you'll just repeat that for each of your vials. And there you go. And just cap them all. Alright, so now we have our cells and they're ready to go. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to freeze them at negative 80 degrees Celsius before we freeze them in nitrogen. And we're going to put them in this little container, or this little holder. And this was found right where the DMSO, the same drawer the DMSO came in. So you're just going to throw your cells in there. And we're going to go here into room 316, core biology. Alright, so we're back in the back right corner of room 316 in core biology. And this is the freezer that we work with, and that's where we're going to keep our cells for the next day. So there's a little lock mechanism over here, and we are just going to open up the freezer. And then we have our cells here in this top compartment, and we'll just set the cells, and we're going to leave them there for 1 to 2 days, depending on how much time you have. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to freeze them in nitrogen after that day. Alright, so we've taken our cells out of the freezer after they've been there for a day, and now we are going to, we're in the room that's just next to the room with the hood in it, and we have safety glasses, jacket, insulated gloves, and rubber gloves, just to make sure that we will be safe through this process. Alright, so we have all the safety equipment on, and now we're going to go over to our actual liquid nitrogen cryosafe. You're going to roll it out, just pull it out a little bit here. You're going to pull off the cover. And then we're looking at the number 2 slot. There's a number 2 right here, and that's where our cells are found. So you're going to pull up on this, and it kind of swings out. And this is all submerged in liquid nitrogen, so you're just going to want to pull up slowly so that as much of that liquid nitrogen will drain off as possible, kind of tilting back and forth as you do it, just to make sure you're getting as much of that liquid nitrogen kind of out of and off of all of these containers. You could even pull it up as you go and kind of set it on the edge, just so that it runs off into where we need it to go. So after you have let the liquid nitrogen pour off, you're going to want to go ahead and just set it on the floor here. I'm going to let it drain just a little bit more. Alright, once you feel that you've gotten most of the liquid nitrogen up, you're going to set it right on the floor. And we're actually looking right here, 2J, that's where we're trying to get to. So we're going to take our little locking mechanism pin and you just pull it straight up and through. And set that off to the side. Make sure you keep track of it. And then you're just going to pop out 2J. That's where we're at. And then we'll take your cells and you'll place them in the spot you want them. Make sure you record where you're putting them. So in this case, we're going to put them in spots 2, 3, and 4. And then you'll just reverse your process here and you're going to put everything back the way you came. The hardest part is getting this pin in. You kind of got to twist and make it all happen. Maybe I'll get lucky and get it all in one shot. And then make sure you lock it in. This is the most important part. We gotta lock it, otherwise the cell will have stuff floating around down the bottom. Okay, so then now that our cells have been put in here, you'll just take the whole deal and drop it slowly back into the cryo. Alright, and then kind of slide it back in, and then drop it right in where you need it. Perfect. And then just throw the lid back on and you have successfully frozen some cells.